Good afternoon, Trump's family. Welcome back to my channel. Hope you having a great weekend and God bless you. Let's get into the news. And fuel are just starting to rage over here in the talks about Trump's potential VP. Who would he want to be his running mate? And a lot of speculated early on, of course, big names like DeSantis and Rand Paul. Marjorie Taylor Greene has been a name, Jim Jordan. Even Candace Owens. People have been out there talking about that. But Kari Lake has been a name that has been appearing more and more, and lots more talk is happening around the campus of Kari Lake and Trump with everything that's currently happening in Arizona. They're getting very close to a recount right now in Arizona. We don't know how that one it's still going to end up. I hope that Kari Lake is able to win that governorship in Arizona. However, if for whatever reason it ends up being the way it is, Kari Lake would be a phenomenal VP nomination alongside President Trump. And speculation is growing very rapidly because recently, Kari Lake was photographed at a dinner with President Trump and other people feeling the speculation that he is maybe leaning in on a Kari Lake VP. So let's kind of dive into what we have here. Coming to us by political insiders as Kari Lake visits Mar-a-Lago, who will be Trump's VP pick. The Arizona governor's race may very well go into a recount, so results may not be known for a while, but whether she wins or loses. If Democrats think Kari Lake is going away quietly, there's a good chance they are sadly mistaken. On Thursday, Lake made a trip to Mar-a-Lago, the Florida state of former President Donald Trump. She was there to an attendant event put on by the American First Pulse Policy Institute, a think tank formed by several former members of the Trump administration. Like had previously said of Trump's presidential announcement, "Trump has my complete and total endorsement." With that announcement, Donald Trump will eventually be looking for a running mate. The question is, who will that be? And many have stated that has been Kari Lake. Caroline is a newcomer to politics, but with a splash that she has made. Like, I spent 20 years as a news anchor for Phoenix, before stepping down and running for governor. Democrats without thinking usually telegraph. Who is it they're afraid of? And they're usually afraid of Kari Lake? Yeah, fantastic. And here's a photo. Trump, Kari Lake, Bolsonaro. Let's go. Huge. Do you see Kari Lake here in those discussions along with President Trump there, and that can be a potential monster of a ticket heading into 2024? I don't know what you guys think. Do you think Kari Lake would be an amazing VP? If for whatever reason it stands in shenanigans in Arizona and everything we know about what's happening there. Regardless, would you want to see her as President Trump's VP? And some significant news. Let's talk about misinformation. Can we do that for a second here? Leftoids, they're always going on about dangerous misinformation, which somehow magically from their perspective only ever comes from the right-wing. Misinformation, and disinformation, of course, what it really means is information that disproves their approved narrative, but they're always going on and on. Obama during those misinformation summits telling us just how dangerous it is, how there's real-world consequences to misinformation. Of course, we've proven countless times that the majority of the time this misinformation that ends up deadly or dangerous generally comes from the left. I mean, it's no news, no surprise to anyone, but this time this is next level. Let's talk about misinformation. Let's talk about real dangerous misinformation. Leftwards, shall we? You've heard it. Nothing. Over the last couple of days, the news cycle has shifted very quickly away from the FTX fraud/Democrat connection, focusing on a breaking story that a missile was fired into NATO member territory Poland, taking the lives of 2 innocent civilians, and immediately the leftist press and, of course, the lot of Mir Zelensky, who's really starting to get on my last nerve, push the narrative that it was a Russian strike. It couldn't be anything else. Russian escalation attacking a NATO member, seemingly trying to push us further into World War III. All the left droids in the corporate press immediately jumping on this warmongering bandwagon. Facts be damned, details be damned. Lefties not trying to figure out the facts and find out what really happened here, rather escalating the conflict like they have been in. Turns out a couple of days later, those of us who are patient and didn't want to jump to conclusions. It turns out you're not going to believe this, except you definitely will believe this. It wasn't a Russian airstrike being fired into NATO territory, escalating the conflict and expanding the war. The missile was in fact Ukrainian. You cannot make this stuff up. Let's talk about deadly misinformation. Let's talk about misinformation that leftoids peddle, which could possibly plunge us into World War III. Let's continue to expose the war-mongering left. Alright folks, So we all saw the news as it hit headlines like this: Poland suggest Russian-made missile killed 2 inside its borders. Leftist media outrage that Russia is escalation of the war or supposedly escalation of the war. And of course, without any of the facts. All the leftist bots just accept the narrative as follows: the explosion that killed 2 in Poland was a Russian terror attack. Send more billions to Ukraine by the narrative hook, line, and sinker, and mindlessly push the leftist Twitter talking point. And of course, this guy who, as I stated, is really starting to get on my nerves, as sort of a lot of Mir Zelensky immediately takes to Twitter, had a call with Poland President Andrzej Duda, expressed condolences over the death of Polish citizens. We exchanged available information and are clarifying all the facts. Ukraine, Poland, and all of Europe and the world must be fully protected from terrorist Russia. I mean, do you see the contradiction? We are clarifying all of the facts as this guy explicitly pushes misinformation. Here's a lot of Mir Zelensky clip that was translated by a user. Zelensky says terror is not limited to our national borders. Russian missiles hit Poland. Fire missiles at NATO territory. This is a Russian missile attack on collective security. This is a very significant escalation. We must act, and it's funny, because before we even got the clarification or all the details dropped, this Twitter user or Tim Chaparral have rights, and if this is a Ukrainian air defense missile that has lost its target, will everyone still shout that it is necessary to introduce the Article 5 And would you look at that random Twitter user hit the nail right on the head. All of a sudden, in real time, all the mainstream media headlines are changing. A blast hits Poland. Russia loses more ground in Ukraine. All of a sudden they're not calling it a Russian attack. They're calling it a blast or just an explosion. It turns out that this is the missile that hit Poland, and what the experts are saying. I'm no expert on artillery, but apparently the supposed strike this missile came from Ukraine. It's a Ukrainian shell either. It was a misfire or a malfunction. As NPR reports, Poland says missile strike on its land appears to be an accident by Ukraine. Poland's president said Wednesday that it appears a missile that landed just inside the country's border was from Ukraine in what he called an unfortunate accident. We have no evidence at the moment that it was a rocket launched by Russian forces, and see, we kind of knew this from the start. A lot of preliminary information that was dropping was suggesting that the trajectory of the missile launch could not have come from the Russian side. And so it made no sense. You know what else? It made no sense to rush to judgment, yet left Dwa and Volodymyr Zelensky had absolutely no problem falsely claiming that this was a terror attack from the Russian state, claiming that it's Russian escalation, when they themselves are the ones trying to escalate this conflict. And the timing of all of this is just completely ridiculous. The night of the midterms, when Republicans were supposed to win this massive majority in the Senate and, of course, an even greater majority in the House. All of a sudden, Zelensky was open to negotiating peace talks. It seems as though he put that on the back burner. Then this happens, and all of a sudden, it's an escalation and something must be done. I mean, the timing is uncanny. And even now, the Ukrainian state continues to dig its heels in Russia. Ukraine wars. Zelensky dismisses NATO suggestion missile that hit Poland was Ukrainian as it happened. I mean, the facts are pretty much clear at this point, yet Zelensky denies the facts, because it seems as though he doesn't want to stop the incoming cash. Take a scroll through his Twitter line, and it's nothing but him thanking Western states for sending hundreds of millions to billions of dollars, depending on the state size, in foreign aid and military aid. And funnily enough, just yesterday, the U.S. Congress signs over another $37 billion to continue funding this escalation of war in Ukraine. I mean, once again, what a slap in the face. Great job, millennials and Gen Z. You voted for student loan forgiveness. Instead, the entire student loan forgiveness plan has been completely halted. Nobody's getting the student loan forgiveness. Instead, what you're getting is $37 billion being sent to the Ukrainian laundromat. You wanted student loan, did you? Well, best we could do is laundering $37 billion taxpayer dollars and starting World War III was sorry. We're sorry. We're sorry. I'm deeply sorry. I don't know about you guys, but I am getting sick and tired. I mean, of course, I'm sympathetic to the outrage over the invasion of sovereign land. Obviously, that makes me uncomfortable. And I don't like that. But I still think that there was a democratic and diplomatic solution to this problem. It's a land dispute, a border dispute. And you know what, the people are involved as well. Again, from what we understand, the people in Donbass and the people in Crimea, a good portion of them, if not the majority of them want to be absorbed by the Russian nation. There should very easily be a diplomatic solution to this problem. But of course, instead of meeting at the table and finding some sort of solution, the deep state wants to continue to spend billions of dollars, drive prices of everything up, use straight up fake news and misinformation to continue perpetuating and escalating this conflict. And the whole thing at this point is just getting sickening, not to mention the fact that you're paying for it, and what it really seems to be is a money laundering racket to pocket those taxpayer dollars for globalist entities to pocket those taxpayer dollars. And of course, not to mention the continued untold human suffering. Let's talk about misinformation that's leading to actual violence and suffering. Once again, the left boys show us exactly who's really peddling in dangerous misinformation. Thank you for always watching and subscribing to the channel. Every channel subscribe is my motivation to work harder. Thank you very much. WWG